And the second candle brings the light of science, the light of science. Looking at everything that exists out there, all of nature. Where do you go where you sense, hey, there's got to be something bigger out there? Let me make it simple. Are you a beach person or a mountain person? Where are you on the beach, mountain? For me, my happy place, those of you who know me, it's up high in the Rocky Mountains, right? The staggering cliffs, the sound of the wind whispering in the aspen trees, the roar of a mountain stream. I just know, man, there is something bigger than me. I just kind of connect with God in that sort of space. A number of scholars and scientists in multiple disciplines have said, time plus chance does not create complex design. In fact, it usually creates a mess. If you got a part of your yard that you haven't done anything with in a long time, it doesn't look too good, right? It's getting worse year by year. In studying this more specifically, I'll tell you the argument historically has been called the teleological argument. It's really the argument from design. You look at the world, look at all the complexity, all the unique design of the world and say there's got to be a designer. It's kind of the essence of the argument. But this idea that time plus chance can't get us there was stated really powerfully in a book called Evolution from Space. Evolution from Space. The authors are not Christians. They began to calculate what are the odds that a live enzyme could create a living cell. As they did the math and researched it all, they said our conclusion is that the chances of a live enzyme to a living cell is 10 to the 40,000th power. That's a number way beyond my mind. Let me give you a correlation. Some people estimate the number of atoms in the universe is 10 to the 80th power, just for comparison. So the authors used an illustration. They said the likelihood of a live enzyme to a living cell out of pure chance is the likelihood of a tornado sweeping through a junkyard might assemble a Boeing 747. Just as an illustration, right? But I think they're right. Looking at the complexity of the world, it's just absolutely amazing to see that something this has got to come from somewhere. There's this all that's doesn't make sense that the chaos, that the order came from absolute chaos. However, you might say, wait a minute. You know, I've seen some pretty amazing things that come from just natural processes. How about the Grand Canyon? Stunning example. I've been there to see it one time. It was breathtaking. It was created by erosion. Natural processes explain where the Grand Canyon came from. However, let's say you go to Egypt and see the pyramids. You don't say, look at what erosion did. You're like, some intelligent people created this, and how in the world did they make this thousands of years ago before we had all the tools we have today? Our world is more like the pyramids than the Grand Canyon. It's more intentional order than it is repetitive patterns. And there are a lot of repetitive, beautiful patterns like the Grand Canyon. William Paley, several hundred years ago, used a famous analogy he called the Watchmaker. Real simple. You're walking on a beach. Okay, now we're talking to the beach people. Gonna give you a little time too. So you're walking on the beach and you see a seashell. It's gorgeous. You pick it up and think, yeah, this is amazing. I think I'm gonna take this home. And then you walk along and you stumble on a watch and you pick it up and you think, I wonder who lost their watch. You don't confuse the seashell for the watch. You intuitively understand the difference. You know the difference between a seashell and an Apple iWatch. Our world is more like an Apple iWatch. It shows complex design. For instance, you see that in DNA. DNA is composed of 3 billion base pairs. It's incredibly complex. It's not just repeated patterns. There's a gentleman I'll quote. He was a British philosopher, world-renowned, Oxford professor at Oxford, hardcore atheist since he was 15 till late in his life. Anthony Flew. Anthony Flew would often quote the Socratic quote from Socrates, I must follow the argument wherever it leads. In other words, he really wanted to be intellectually honest. I'm going to follow the argument wherever it leads, whether that means I change my mind or not. Late in his life, he wrote a book, There Is a God, How the World's Most Notorious Atheist Changed His Mind. I'm not saying he became a Christian, he became a theist. And it was the DNA that convinced him. The more that we understood about DNA, the complexity of it, the significance of it, here's his conclusion. A superintelligence is the only good explanation of the origin of life and the complexity of nature. I think he's right. You see the complexity of DNA, and he's right. For me, that's matched with the exquisitely fine-tuned design of the earth to enable us to live. A number of constants have to be in place. Numbers have to be exactly right, just incredibly fine-tuned. There's actually dozens and dozens of these to enable human life. Let me just give you a simple one. If the earth were marginally closer to the sun, none of us would survive. If it's 200 or 300 degrees, we're not making it. If the earth were a bit farther away from the sun, it'd be too cold for human life. Now, there are dozens and dozens of those that are even much more precise than that. Scientists call it the Anthropic Principle. Anthropology, okay, human. The Anthropic Principle is that the universe is fine-tuned for human life at a very sophisticated level. With all that complexity and all that design, both of our world and of human life, it makes sense there was a designer. I agree with astronomer Alan Sandage, who said, quote, "I find it quite improbable that such order came out of chaos. There has to be some organizing principle. God to me is a mystery, but is the explanation for the miracle of existence, why there is something instead of nothing."